Hi ho, hockey world. How you doing today? We are here, and it's Monday, and there's some things to talk about. But we're gonna go to the rumor chart. We're gonna have some fun with the rumor chart today for sure. And but Russ, what's going on?
Wanted to talk about there's a reliever in baseball, Jordan Hicks, who pitches for the Cardinals, and earlier this year, like in spring training, he threw 104.6, and during the game against the Mets the other day, he touched 104 twice. And again, when you see 104 in context of a game, it really is unbelievable fast. Now, the reason I talk about it is because, again, I go back to this Nolan Ryan documentary where Jerry Groh, who used to catch for the Mets, also a friend of Nolan Ryan, said that, well, with the way the guns were then, they weren't accurate. Nolan Ryan really threw 108. And, of course, that's a big time story because when you see this guy throw 104 now in the league as the fastest, the guys absolutely can't keep up with it. If Ryan really threw 108, nobody would have ever hit the ball. Because
It was funny. I was watching the baseball documentary of Ken Burns, which we go to. Ken Burns documentary rotation, kind of for sleeping too, and watching the Ken Burns documentary. And they were talking about the one of the fastest pitchers, really old guy. I wish I remembered his name.
Walter Johnson.
Walter Johnson, yeah.
Maybe it was Walter Johnson. Anyway,
yeah, the big train, that was his name.
Right, really old guy. And the funny quote that he had in the thing was, the story was that he gets up there, first batter he throws the first pitch right down the center of the plate. Umpire calls it a strike. Second pitch, strike. Third pitch, strike, and the batter turns to the umpire and says, "That sounded low."
Yeah. But
I thought that story was awesome.
To put it in perspective, he was throwing between 87 and 90 back then.
I think so. Yeah, they don't know, right? But,
yeah, I mean that. As much as I'm a big Nolan Ryan guy, but I'm a little skeptical that he was throwing 108.
Yeah.
Because they had to figure that out with math, and like they used to say the Gordie Howe's wrist shot was 115 miles per hour. I'm just. Yeah. So I think the modern, you get more velocity now because you don't have to save yourself. You're just going out throwing one inning, usually.
Yeah, and if you watch the at-bats, like if you got any kind of contact, it went far, but it was a fly out. And most of the guys were missing. And then there was like the occasional bloop single because the guy just hit it at the last second. But
with 104 miles an hour, you have to start swinging when you get up in the morning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like what do you do? I mean,
that's just ridiculous.
It's insane at that point. You are guessing.
Well, I do remember when, and this was 3-4 years ago, when the Yankees reacquired Aroldis Chapman after they had traded him to the Cubs to win a World Series. He came back, and there were times he hit 102, 103. Yeah. And as a left-handed guy, that was even more impressive. But the thing that was the most scary, Kev, was he didn't know where the hell that was going. It was like, it's like, I remember my friend's dad, who was a minor league baseball player, telling me stories about a relief pitcher for the Yankees named Ryan Duran, who had really thick Coke bottle glasses, and he would on purpose throw one to the backstop. So basically sending the message that I don't know where this is going, and then wearing these thick glasses, and then he sort of revealed that he actually could see, and that was all just an act.
He wrote a great book, Ryan Duran. I interviewed him. A really cool guy. I didn't get to watch him play, but he did have that personality, and you needed that. Like you want to succeed? That's like the Rod Dibble kind of personality.
I was gonna say, Kevin, because this, I grew up watching this, the Al Raboskis or the
Dick Raditz, Sam McDowell, they were always a little wild.
Fidrich talking to the glove, or a senior smoke, Emilio Lopez.
You don't want them being comfortable.
Well, the 2 points I would make on that, I think people develop that fear pretty honestly, because if you think back to when you played Little League, who did you fear? You feared the guys that were wild. Because if a guy was just constantly around the plate, you weren't all that scared by his fastball. But the guy was throwing and it went behind you and over you. And,
I was one of the wild guys. I think a good friend of mine, and I stopped pitching after that because I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and like you said earlier, that a lot of that was purposeful. But they say there are guys that hit better in the major leagues than they do in the minor leagues, and that's because the major league pitchers are around the plate usually. So where in the minor leagues are all over.
Interesting.
They're all over everywhere. So
all right, let's go. Here we go. Ready? Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, June 19th, 2023. I'm
Michael Agello, and the weather in Buffalo is supposed to get up to the 80s this week. And you know what? I hate that.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. There's no weather Mike likes, honestly.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing Mike likes, let alone weather. So.
What is the ideal weather, Mike? That's Kevin Allen. I am Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast.
70 to 75 and sunny with a little breeze.
All right. You get that in Buffalo 4 times a year.
About 3 times a year, yeah.
Did you ever have that as a personality, 70, 75 and sunny?
I'm always stormy, Kev.
My grandmother used to say, you need to live in a place where the weather tries to kill you at least twice a year.
Right.
Once by heat, once by cold. She says, if you don't live in a place that...
Yeah, I filled that quota already.
You do. You fill that quota for sure. I have kind of an interesting thing I wanted to bounce off you guys as a little discussion point to start with. Then we're going to get into some rumors, of course. But as I'm preparing for the for this and getting and we talked about how weak it is goaltending wise, Kevin, and it is kind of weak, but not as weak as we thought it was.
No, they've added some goalies to the mix.
Gotten better, and now but where it really is weak, I think, is defenseman. I think defenseman is where this UFA class is really low. As far as like difference making defensemen, guys that can make a difference. I mean, there's plenty of like 3, 4s, 5, 6s out there, but and how important is that? And so I was trying to go through this and went through this with a friend of mine, and I got this list sent to me from Reddit, which was the teams in the NHL whose defense scored the most points 5-on-5, and it's a fantastic, interesting statistic, which I don't think anybody will ever guess. So I'm going to show you guys some of this. I'm going to bring it up here. I'm going to kind of do it dramatically, which will be kind of fun. Why not? Okay, so I'm going to share the screen here, and here it comes. Okay, so here we go. All right, so here we go. All right, so this is coming up. Sure. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start with this. Now this is number 32 and 31. Okay, so these are the worst two. These are the worst 2 teams in the league as far as points from defensemen 5-on-5. Columbus and Minnesota, which is I thought Minnesota. This was a surprising stat for Minnesota for me. Like
Well, Dumba's point total went down a lot, so that's a big issue.
Yes,
and they don't really have that dominant offensive defenseman.
No,
right?
They don't. And Columbus, I mean, that was excusable because Werenski was out for most of the year. They would have been middle of the pack had he been healthy.
Werenski, number 30 and 29, Chicago and Ottawa. So again, Ottawa.
Ottawa's a little surprising because
Shabbat.
They got Shabbat and Jake Sanderson joined them. He put up some points. So
all right,
they won't be last this year. That's my prediction.
27 and 28, Arizona and Anaheim. So Arizona at 27, higher than I thought they'd be.
Anaheim was hurt by the trade of Lindholm, by the
Drysdale got hurt.
Drysdale.
Well, a lot of this has to do with Arizona Gostisbehere, who had a really good
he had 41 points.
So I mean, 41 of those 97 points are Gostisbehere's. Right, that's how many points they had. So this is, by the way, this is goals, assists, points, and shots. This thing across the top here. So then we go to 26 and 25, Philadelphia and Nashville.
Nashville with Yossi is a little surprising.
Yeah, Yossi's it though.
But this is one of Nashville's prides. Like this is one of the things that they live and die on, right, Kevin? I mean, the defense stepping up. Did we lose Kevin?
He might be
frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen.
Well, the thing is, and that may have been true a couple of years ago, but they took on an older Ryan McDonough who doesn't score points anymore.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Fabro really hasn't jumped up into being the defenseman that they thought he was going to be.
Philadelphia a little higher than I thought they'd be in this list. Not like much higher, but
I mean, D'Angelo had 40-something points, and Sam had 20-something. They, if you add them all up, it's not terrible. It's just not great. That's all.
Yeah, it's just not great for sure. So Kevin, I was saying 26 for Nashville. That's like a pride and joy of that team. That's not a good stat for them.
No, especially when they own Yossi. So
yeah, and they had Ekholm most of the year. 24 the LA Kings and 23 the Vancouver Canucks. So we think about that's about right. That's kind of where I thought.
Well, I mean, with the Kings, it's a little surprising because Doughty had a pretty decent year. Mikey Anderson's more of a defensive defenseman. Dursey is more offensive. Yeah. That number will probably get better with Brant Clark coming in, and 24th is not great, but I think that there's room for improvement there. Vancouver, there's one of the reasons they bought out Oliver Ekman-Larsson. You're spending $8.25 million, and you're 23rd in the league.
Yeah, how does that look now? Remember you kind of liked the Larsson deal. How does that look today?
I liked it because of Connor Garland, honestly, and he just had not been very good.
But it's $8.25 million on a guy who was declining already.
I know you like Garland. We knew that.
I like Connor Garland, and I thought he would be a surprise in that deal, that it would really make a difference. And that
and they're trying to get rid of him too. So
now they're trying to get rid of him too. I know. Yeah. All right, so 22, the Buffalo Sabres.
That'll go nothing. That'll go nothing but up with Dahlin, and that's with Dahlin.
Yeah,
I think Power's offensive numbers will
go up this year,
and they're probably going to get another defenseman in a trade.
21, Pittsburgh Penguins.
Letang didn't play enough, but he played enough to be 21.
Yeah, I mean 21. That's a problem. That's when you look why the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't make the playoffs. This is definitely one of them.
Yeah,
one of the reasons, because that's a big thing there. 20, the Dallas Stars. All right, that kind of shocked me. I mean,
remember their power play was bad. Like that's why they traded for Lundqvist and Heiskanen. Heiskanen was really.
These are all 5-on-5 numbers. These are all
but actually, 5-on-5. Sorry.
You know what
these
this
are all
is?
5-on-5 numbers.
But this is reflective of is the departure of Klingberg and how important Klingberg was in terms of driving offense from the blue line.
Yeah, for sure. 19, Detroit Red Wings. Higher or lower than you would have guessed, Kevin?
Middle of the pack sounds about right. I mean, Cider probably wasn't quite as offensive that they, kind of hoped he would, but the power play was up and down. So, they'll be better too next year. Edmondson will be there, and Cider, I think, will be, just learning how to be the sole point man. Like he plays so much, he gets so much of the point time.
Right.
Point person.
So, 5-on-5 shows a lot. Also, like really about teams with defensemen step up in the play more. That's another thing that you have to look at, really. I think with the stat, because that's gonna 5-on-5 stats. But I think anybody who thought Detroit would have score more, defensemen would score more goals than Dallas or Pittsburgh, or Buffalo, it's pretty surprising. Yeah. Number 18, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mike.
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. I mean, Morgan Riley did not have a strong offensive year, had some injury issues. And then they trade probably their second best offensive defenseman in Rasmus Sandin. Yeah. But they got consistent numbers out of guys like Giordano and Brody. But they need Riley to be a 70-point defenseman to be.
When you have a lot of assists here, 95 assists, Yeah. Well, but goal wise, that's low.
Yeah.
Tampa at 17. Okay, so again, Hedman, you would think.
Yeah, but who else? Sergachev is pretty decent offensively. After that, it's mostly Cernak and stay-at-home guys. Ian Cole.
Yeah.
Not a lot of offense there.
16 up. Sorry. Don't pretend you didn't see that. 16, Montreal Canadiens defensemen ahead of Tampa and Toronto in points. Well, the same as Tampa, but with one more goal.
That's surprising.
That is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
Their defensive core is not doing that badly. 15, the Vegas Golden Knights. Come on, this is surprising. Based on
I don't think it's that surprising. They've got Martinez. White Cloud's numbers went up a lot. He's developed this year. Pietrangelo always puts up points. He always gets assists. He's just not a guy you always look at for 60 points, but he puts up pretty respectable numbers every year. I'm not shocked at that.
I am. They've got 4.
I would have thought they'd be higher too with Pietrangelo and Theodore, and
They've got 4 scoring defensemen pretty much. 14, the St. Louis Blues. Interesting because, who would think St. Louis is ahead of Vegas on this list, right? But
yeah, but okay.
They got Falk. They got
Krug. I mean,
okay.
The thing
13,
is,
Edmonton. Edmonton, who we all talk about Edmonton, obviously they get a lot of points in general, and the 98 assists over here is a big number.
Right, but the offensive production is not the concern.
Yeah, never been the issue.
Yeah,
it's 355 shots.
It's been defensive incompetence. That's the problem.
For sure. Well, we're just talking about this right now, Mike. 12, Calgary in the Battle of Alberta, beating out, Edmonton just barely. But that number, again, here's a team that, fired their coach. And, because, for good reason probably, but you're just saying this is 42 goals. It's a big number.
Yeah, Zadorov scoring a hat trick in the last game of the season helped out a bit.
Helps a little bit, but still, that's even then you're at close to 40 goals. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
11, the New York Rangers.
Not surprising.
Not surprising.
They're mostly offensive on the blue line. So
yeah, they got Adam Fox. He's
and Keandre Miller and
for sure.
Points. And
10, the Winnipeg Jets. That's weird.
No, Morrissey had a
good year, monster year.
Yeah,
he was on my Norris list. He may not have been on others' Norris list, but Morrissey had an amazing year.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Number 9, the Hurricanes. I wouldn't. That's not surprising. Although I would expect that they would be in the top 5, maybe even. But
yeah.
Dougie Hamilton.
Number 9. Pretty interesting. 8, the Washington Capitals. This number really shocks me. Sorry.
Especially since Karlsson was out for most of the year.
Yeah. I mean, they had 98.
And then they traded Orlov too.
Yeah.
Right?
But Sandin came in and really
pump up some points.
Yeah. It shows you that some of their other defensemen were doing the job, as far as scoring.
I mean, offensively, yes, but as we
so when I'm looking at this from a free agent perspective, I'm saying maybe Washington's going to let it ride a little bit. Maybe they're going to go with these guys a little bit longer because they're getting production here. Maybe
I don't think they need more guys who could play defense. It's not so much the offensive defensive number.
Remember what Washington did, Ak. They traded the ones that they couldn't get re-signed, like Orlov.
Right.
And they re-signed Jensen and they re-signed Trevor Van Riemsdyk. So it was all money in that respect.
It was. 11, the New Jersey Devils.
Shocking.
It's about.
Dougie Hamilton.
Hamilton, yeah, for sure.
Hamilton's got the numbers there. 6, Florida Panthers, which is,
Montour had a career year. He had 7.
Montour had a career year. Ekblad always puts up numbers.
Yeah, Ekblad was hurt a little bit, but still. Number 5, the New York Islanders.
Dobson had a big year. And what's his name? Ryan Bullock has numbers too.
Their problem, Mac, is that their forwards can't score.
Right. I know. But look at this. And look at the Panthers, 705 shots from their defense. That's also really significant. So we have some teams here. This is getting interesting. For the Boston Bruins, that's not so surprising. Obviously, they had a great year.
They could be 1, and it wouldn't shock me.
They could be 1, right. And Colorado, number 3.
Yeah, Makar.
And they'd be higher if Makar didn't get hurt.
Right.
Makar was hurt a lot, yeah. 681 shots, the Bruins only 559 shots from their defense. Only 25 goals, But their defense, wasn't putting up big goals, but still. Number 2, the San Jose Sharks.
Well, it's Karlsson.
It's all Karlsson, obviously, because he had 100 points, right? So,
and we should talk about it, that him after we finish this, because
look at only 482 shots that they took. The defense, kind of crazy. But the number 1 team is the Seattle Kraken.
Now that's surprising, but they got a lot of guys. Yeah.
I mean, that I thought it was very surprising.
They're the definition of scoring by committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard to even off the top of your head think who their defensemen are.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, let's start with this right off that list, was because Kev, the Karlsson thing, where I thought there was almost no chance, even though there was a lot of interest of him getting moved at the deadline because it was so complex. Now in the offseason, with the ability of and the willingness of San Jose to retain significant salary, it seems, from what I heard from Sheng Peng from San Jose Hockey Now and Pierre LeBrun, that they're prepared to retain 3.5, maybe even 4 million to get this done. I think this is going to get done this time.
It is. They want a lot, though. I've talked to people around the league, and that's going to be the issue. How much and whether Karlsson. It's always hard anyway to try to figure out where you want to go to try to win, just because there's too many teams that have a shot.
Sure.
But he may have to go to a team that probably on the surface doesn't have a shot, because the contenders simply don't have the space to even. Yeah. At $7 million, it would be hard for them to fit him in. So it's going to be a struggle.
If the cap had gone up $5 million this offseason, the teams would have lined up, right?
Yeah. Well, Carolina's got a lot. The only problem, a lot of cap space, and they might lose Pesci. So the problem is then, but they don't have a lot moving forward. Like they have a lot of guys.
They don't have a lot in their system. I looked at it. Yeah,
like they have a lot this summer, but that would put them. If they end up for 4 more years, that that $7 million, they're going to need that next year to pay their guys.
Yeah, and I looked at it from the Buffalo perspective, and Buffalo's looking for a right-hand shot, top 4 defenseman that fits, but even if San Jose retained 3.5, 4 million, that's still $7.5 million for the next 4 years. With a team that is going to pay Dahlin 10 to 10.5 and starting next year, Owen Power, they're going to probably try to sign long-term. You just can't, it's a tough fit because the team has to have cap space and the team has to be close to being a contender, or they're trading out a player who, somebody in the chat, and I don't know if this is realistic, was saying, well, Jamie Benn in a deal for Karlsson. Well, San Jose wants assets. They don't want an aging guy like Jamie Benn, even though he's probably still an effective player. They want first round picks. They want prospects.
Yeah, that does not help San Jose one bit.
No.
In fact, I'd rather have Karlsson. So
and Karlsson. The interesting thing when you talk to people about Karlsson is, there are some GMs that absolutely love him. There's some GMs that think he is a product of having the puck all the time in San Jose. He does have the puck all the time. And you put him on a better team where there's other guys who want to have the puck a lot more often, other guys who want to carry the puck up, other guys who want to run the quarterback and stuff like that. Can Karlsson fit into that? And is he going to put the kind of points he's going to put up? Like when you remember as he fell in Ottawa, as he was losing his a little bit, or even in San Jose, when San Jose was better, he wasn't as good, right? So that's what a lot of people say. He was better. When San Jose was a better team with him there, he wasn't all that great.
Well, remember when he was at his best, and it was before the injury set in. But when was he at his best? He was at his best when he had Mark Mathot, a defensive defenseman, playing on his left side.
Yeah,
and you need a stay-at-home guy to play with him. Now in San Jose, it didn't matter. They didn't care. It's like, go ahead, score, go, open yourself up to counterattacks. Who cares?
I'll give you the team I think that should go after him is the Blackhawks, because when you're like 2 years into this Karlsson contract and Bedard's 2 years into this league, and you have Seth Jones and maybe Frank Nazar starting to come in, guess what? They could be pretty good.
That's not the worst suggestion. They got cap space to turn the page.
And they love doing that kind of thing. That's like a Chicago thing to do.
Yeah.
They love making splashes. They're very publicity driven. Blackhawks are.
The problem you're going to have there is that they're not going to want to give up the 2 first-round picks.
No. Probably not, but they've had a lot already, so maybe they would.
I doubt it.
But they would give up 1, and they would give up maybe a couple seconds. They would do something like that.
But as opposed to the other teams, Kev, where they're going to want San Jose to retain everything, with Chicago, they're like, gimme. Like, we'll take 11.5, but we're not going to pay you as much as the other teams.
Yeah, it really does. It's really fascinating that with some teams it's the money and other teams it's the assets, and they don't mesh up. Like the non-contending teams don't want to give up the assets, and teams that are willing to give up the assets, like I think Edmonton, would give up assets. They're trying to win it all. There are other teams trying to win it all, but they don't have the cap space.
Isn't that like a have your cake and eat it too, though? Isn't that basically?
Yeah, no, that's how it works. And to be honest, you were talking about, the Blackhawks should do it, but there's only one person that can decide whether or not that would happen in Chicago, and that's Karlsson.
Right. No doubt.
Yeah. I mean, he'd have to decide. He'd have to believe. You'd have to make that declarative sentence to him.
Right.
Yeah.
And he would have.
You'd have to sell him on it, but like you said, I mean, other than Carolina, you're not going to find many teams with cap space.
No, that's right. And you don't know anyway. Like, it's never been this hard to determine who the contenders are.
I mean, I can say based on who they have, Chicago's in better shape than the Sharks. I can say that. Can I say much more? No.
It's funny. It's funny how, and obviously in social media, anybody can throw out anything, but it's funny how, like, I saw, Karlsson and the Florida Panthers would be a great fit because Ekblad's going to be out. Ekblad's going to be out for a month. Right. You have to carve out $11.5 million in space. So, and they
will keep some money. It's not going to be
sure, but Ek,
you say it's $8 million. Say you have to get
the Panthers are out.
Yeah,
they're out because they don't have a first round pick until the next millennium.
The Canadians can do it, and they could send Josh Anderson back. But again, will they be ready to compete in another year? I don't know. I'm not sure.
The Canadians are also not giving up first round picks. I mean, San Jose, like San Jose, like maybe you can talk them down off of 2.
Right. But
they're going to get one of your first round picks. And, like the Florida Panthers, there's no shot for them,
What if the Ottawa Senators move to bring Cat in somehow in this deal?
If they got a first round pick back and then traded that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but the Brinket market is shrunk based on his price. And even if he signs a 1-year deal at 8, I don't think any team's going to be interested in him until the deadline.
Yeah. Ottawa's running into this situation here that like Buffalo ran into with Taylor Hall. It's like, you've got a guy who's got a high ask, and that'll mitigate what they get in a trade. I mean, it looked great at the draft last year when we saw DeBrincat going to Ottawa. Oh my God, Ottawa's making the big move. Okay, but the thing was, I don't think there was ever a scenario where he was going to want to stay in Ottawa, and that's what's coming to fruition now.
Right.
It's interesting though. Second round picks, like Ek brought those up before. I find it fascinating that it depends if you're on the receiving end or the giving end of a second round pick.
Yeah, I know.
Like I mean, like teams always are trying to get a bunch of those.
Yeah,
but they don't believe in them. Like
I know. Well, because the numbers tell you they shouldn't believe too much in it.
Right. So what I'm saying is this is not the NFL. No, where you say, we'll give you 2 seconds, instead of that, extra first, and the GM's going to say, yeah, but, I can see the statistics tell me that I don't even have better than even odds to get a player out of there.
No, but I'll tell you what the difference is, though. Those first 4 or 5 picks in the second round does make a difference.
Yeah,
sure, but you're not going to get those.
Right.
Because they're going to be with the weaker teams. But you're absolutely right there. Yeah, I mean, you can convince yourself, 36 is like 30, and 30.
If you have like a low first round pick, like a 27th overall or something like that, and then you have a couple second round picks, that can help you move up a little bit. Like that, we've seen that happen.
Well,
not very often. If you go to social media, someone out there's got just a great history of moving up in the draft, and all you see is 17 to 15, 21 to 18. It's really fascinating. But there's been some big ones. Obviously, this Sedins and all that, but they had extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, and also the funny thing is that I know that Kyle Dubas got destroyed last year because he traded a first round pick to get rid of the final 2 years of Peter Mrazek. He traded down, I think, a dozen slots. He traded out of the bottom of the first round for a high second and ended up getting a guy who was in the mix that he wanted to take in the first. So it really, there's like trading out of the first, or there's trading down a couple slots when it means something, and sometimes it doesn't mean much.
Well, and even in the first round, they've reached the point now where they're over 70% success rate in the first round. But most of that is in the first 15 picks.
Right.
Like they're that first 15 picks is in the high, I think in the 90s, or at least the late 80s, and then the second half of that, it starts to wane. Plus, it also depends what you declare a success. A lot of people just use the one game. You play one game, you're an NHL player. Some people say, you got to have 200 games or 300 games.
Somewhere between 100 and 200 is like my marker for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that's it.
I don't know if you saw what came out late last week regarding the ratings for the Stanley Cup Final, but I think it's something we should touch on.
Yeah, we can touch on it, and then we'll get to the rumor chart a little bit.
Yeah, because Kev, the ratings came out and they were the lowest since 2007, which was Anaheim Ottawa, which was not a glitzy matchup, especially with the Canadian team in there. The only other non-COVID years, because those were affected by obviously the time of year and things of that nature, but it was the first year since 1994 that the Cup Final was not on broadcast television. And I was talking to Russ before. It's like, we know the NHL got more money, but I said when they signed this deal, they were going to get treated like a redheaded stepchild by ESPN, and they ended up doing that. And the games were not going to be on NBC or any of the big networks, at least the years that TNT is broadcasting it. Who knows what's going to happen next year with ESPN? They got the upfront money, but I still to this day think that this wasn't a great deal for the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was certainly some confusion this year about where games were, and it didn't feel like people had a handle on it. And I think from that regard, they got to do a better job of education in that regard. But, one thing that we always sort of forget, that it feels like everybody in the world has access to cable programming, but they don't.
They don't. No, they don't.
Yeah, and that causes issues. And you're absolutely right. I was wrong though. I kind of thought that we would get the hockey people would see this as, well, boy, two teams really playing well. This could be a fun, entertaining series, but that really didn't happen. We didn't even get all the fans from the hardcore hockey. And as we talked about before, and we're the only sport that's like this. We don't have casual fans.
No.
We just don't. And it's been proven time and time again that we don't have people that say, well, I got to just see the championship series of the NHL. You do for the World Series and for the Super Bowl. And I think the NBA, though I've never seen any hard evidence of that, but their numbers are good, the NBA, so I would assume they have that. But, we know plenty of people that will just check in to check out the World Series or check in to check out the Super Bowl.
Right.
We don't get that. So when your hardcore people don't show up, you're in trouble. And that's what 43% is a big number to be down that percentage. Like that's.
Yeah, I would say this because I was traveling, and again, every hotel does not have TBS. That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
Now, more of them have ESPN, but not everybody has TBS. So sometimes you're watching it in the lobby bar. But if it's on ABC or NBC, every single TV in America has that.
Right.
And there is something to be said about just turning on the network thing, that the number is going to be higher no matter what. Right. Even if it's like Kevin said, you're not going to get the casual, but it's still like the other thing, like, hey, we got a planned vacation, and now I want to still watch the Stanley Cup, and I'm now in Kentucky, and guess what? I can't watch it in my hotel room, but I wanted to watch it, and I am a hockey fan. I think that goes on a lot.
And I'm pretty sure, and first of all, in terms of the confusion, I know the TBS put the Stanley Cup Final on both TBS and TNT, probably because some places carried one and not the other.
Yeah, that's what they did. But also, you got to take into account that the number of streaming keeps coming up and up and up and up and up. So it's like
that's not quantifiable, Ak. That's the problem.
That is listen. Here's the thing about streaming, right? Because I know some people who have who were doing a Netflix show, right? And they're producing a Netflix show, and it went out, it was on the air, and they're like, getting their actual numbers from Netflix is really hard. They're like, we're on there, but they don't know exactly how many people watch it. Netflix knows, but Netflix doesn't put out there how many people.
No, they don't.
They'll put out the order of the most popular, 10 most popular things, but you don't know how many people are actually watching that. And yet these shows get more and more money to be made.
But this proves my point, Ek. A Mr. Janssen, I'm not going to try and butcher his first name, who's from Iceland, says he doesn't get the NHL on TV. It's cold in Iceland. They should get the NHL.
Yeah.
Well, in Iceland, mostly, and we really appreciate having an Iceland.
Plus, he's probably serving Anthony, because
But here's the thing, in Iceland, you're probably watching mostly everything from streaming services. You know what I mean? So it's like the reality is the streaming service aspect of this can. Remember ESPN's the only one who has those numbers. So,
but looking forward to next year, because they alternate each year. TNT had it this year, ESPN has it next year. We don't know, and maybe it's in the agreement with ESPN, how many of those games are going to be on ABC. The NBA, every game was on ABC. When the NHL was with NBC and NBCSN, over half of the games were on broadcast television. If it's on once or twice, then this deal, the NHL had their head up the rectum, because they need exposure. This is a sport that still needs exposure.
I don't know that it's the same as it's always been. I just don't know. I think that we're not taking in. That is the natural. We're really stuck on an old paradigm here, Mike. I mean, it's and I really don't. I'm not sure.
Go ahead, okay.
I think you're right, Ek, but I do think that we're looking at this, but there is major disappointment in the league over this. So I don't think that
there's a lot of old guys there too. It's on old paradigm.
Yeah, but the people that kind of know what's going on.
I don't know. Do you think more than half the people watched it online?
No.
I'm going to give you.
I think it was about 15% that watched it online.
Yeah, I don't even think it's close. Yeah.
So basically, as of February 2023, TBS had less than 1 million viewers. They were averaging 875,000 viewers.
Yeah, Major League Darts. Major League Darts draws more than that.
And that's the first time they ever dropped under 1 million.
Hey, don't rip on darts, man.
875,000. So now, if you take that 875,000 number and you extrapolate what percentage of those are hockey fans, you get the number we have. It's not good.
It's great. It's great that the NHL got more money for the contract, but balanced with the money is getting more eyeballs. They're also,
not to continue to belabor this point, but as a hockey person myself, I know that it's going to be ridiculously hard to find the games like that. I've learned that, everybody knows it's going to always be not the simplest thing to do. You're always going to have to find it somewhere. So I think a lot of hockey people have just gone to streaming because that's way easier. It's just
streaming. We had a hard time finding it last year.
Yeah, it's not as bad as it was when it was Sports Channel America back in the day, but it's still pretty bad. I mean, okay, I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm 9 miles away from the Canadian border and I get CBC and I watch Hockey Night in Canada. But if I'm somebody in Kansas and I want to watch the Stanley Cup final, good luck.
But
that's the problem.
It's not that hard. I mean, if you're a hockey fan,
there's some people who are not.
You're gonna find a way to watch it in Kansas.
There are some people that are technologically challenged who just want to turn the damn TV on and watch the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think young people stream obviously, and older people get cable. Maybe
if you're over 60, you don't know how to stream, but otherwise, I think most my in-laws know how to stream everything. They're 85. It's
there's a difference between knowing how to stream and wanting to go find a hockey game,
And people,
you're a hockey fan, Kevin. You've been doing this for a while. You know how to do it. You know how to find it. You know where to get it. Because you know that it's not just going to be on ABC.
Well, I mean, some of this is that we're not even discussing. The real problem is there are not enough hockey fans.
Well, that is the biggest problem.
That's at the heart of all this. We don't have enough people that are interested enough to make any effort to go find it. So
I bet we have more hockey fans than we've ever had before. I mean, look at this. Look what's
happening. You could say that without just the fact that our country has grown.
Right.
So, we have 32 teams, and we have 32 teams, and we have
sure. We're a gay revenue-driven league. I mean, I think that's you're being Captain Obvious in that regard.
Here's the other thing. If you want to get at the other number, The second round was averaging like 3.8 million a time for games, probably the ESPN games, because they have more viewers.
Right. And they said that I think the
hold on, you don't think?
No,
they had more viewers than TBS, a lot more.
Yes, a lot more.
It's a guarantee.
Right, because ESPN is going to be on every bar or whatever, and people are going to go to ESPN.
Well, that matters.
Yeah,
I get that, but hockey fans are going to watch it no matter. They're going to watch it. But now, you can say there aren't enough hockey fans. I get that, and you can say that you're not going to. But I think there's more people. There's more hockey fans than ever before.
Fans don't want to work too hard to find the game. They just want to turn it on and watch. That's it.
I think the bottom line is that there are certainly more hockey people watching, or more hockey fans now, but still not nearly enough. I mean, not enough to produce. Yeah. I mean, because you got to believe that there is many people streaming in other sports, and they still have excellent numbers, and we don't. So those people are. I think you're far more likely to stream, NFL games and than or baseball games than you are hockey, and yet their numbers are still good, or still presentable, and ours really aren't. So I mean, that's the bottom line, and I think that's not on. That's just on the hockey fandom. We just don't have enough of us. So
and as a segue into the rumors. I was just looking at the free agent defenseman, and if all things being equal, I would say right now in this free agent class, not including Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But I think there are maybe 3 top 4 defensemen, maybe 3 or 4, and then after that, Mayfield, Klingberg, Dumba, and Orlov. After that,
and that's it.
We should bring up the Puck Daddy Greg Wisniewski from ESPN got the greatest quote ever from a GM who he asked him, how strong the free agent class was. And
I'm paraphrasing.
Go ahead, Mike.
It's bleeping awful.
Yeah, both Mike and I used that, and we bleeped it out, but.
Yeah, but thankfully, Kev, I was wondering, should I use the real word or should I put bleeping? And I was like, okay, my self-control got the better of me, and in that instance,
I'll give you a good reason why. One reason why is we noticed a lot of teams came to terms with their guys or they traded them.
Yeah, and really, that's mostly been the case. Like I still have clippings from when the salary cap came in, and there was just dire not dire in the sense that they didn't want it to happen, because they did, but everybody said, you're going to lose players, it'll be sad for your franchises, but you're going to get somebody else. Yeah, because there's going to be so much movement, and that has never really happened. Everyone has worked hard to try to retain their guys. Now, it didn't always happen. John Tavares left. A lot of not a lot, but players have left. But this year, it just seems like, there's just less than usual. And people are just talking about. But I think there's less people looking only because of the cap situation created by the fact that we should have a higher cap than what we have now. So
I think that we do have an interesting group of 3rd and 4th liners that we have seen make a big difference. And I know that it's not as sexy for sure as the top guys, but when we think about the best signings each year, sometimes those 3rd or 4th liners end up being one of the best signings. So I kind of don't respect a GM who says that in a way. I mean, I'm not saying that, to me, this is what GM, this is what they do. This is their challenge. Their challenge is to find those guys, to find those players out there.
Yeah. But I mean, I think he was just making a point. Like, I don't think he's quitting and abdicating his.
I know he's not quitting, but I don't know.
Where a general manager can make his mark in this free agent pool is with these 1-year guys, picking them up off the scrap heap and getting Michael Bunting 2 years ago at $950,000 was a grand slam home run for Cal because he was a nominee for the Calder Trophy and scored 23 goals in his second year.
Carter Verhaeghe, was. I mean,
for sure.
He's out there, and that's where you're going to make or break this, and that's
But
that happens every free agent signing period. That's not different this year. Those guys are going to be out there.
I think that's why, to me, the one thing, the crazy ridiculousness that is thrown at sometimes the top guys, when that's not thrown out there, you definitely get a more in my experience, you get a more interesting free agency because there's more money out there to spend on these guys, and you start to see some fun things develop.
Well, my point about bringing up a guy like Bunting is, now he's out in free agency. He's put up those 2 good years, and he's going to get paid probably pretty well by some team. But within that could turn from being one of the best deals to being one of the worst because his numbers may have been inflated because he was playing with Matthews or playing with Tavares. And if he goes someplace else and he's making $4.5 million, then he might be a bad contract.
Yeah, for sure. And that's and also just I've talked to enough players who've gotten like the big contracts, and then the pressure that a big contract that brings with it does affect players as well. And that's a big thing. And I'll never forget the most famous one for me was a good buddy Jay McKee, who was playing in Buffalo, was killing it. He was like one of the best defensemen in the league as far as defensive defenseman goes.
And that deal with St. Louis was terrible.
And a huge deal with St. Louis, like that. But suddenly he feels like he's got to score goals because he's making all this money, but he's not a goal scoring defenseman. So he's
and also I made it because I know it very well because it was with Buffalo. The injuries that he incurred over years, with Buffalo blocking shots, everything hit when he went to St. Louis, and he dropped like a stone afterwards.
And I think that's but I think with
Billy Leno was the perfect example of like Bunting. He leaves that great line on the Flyers and he can't do anything.
Yeah, he had one good playoff and then some stupid.
But definitely talented, So it's like one of these things. It's like you can see that it depends on so many things in hockey. So let's go to this for a second. We'll go to a couple names here for fun. Okay. Let's see, share screen, and we're gonna. Okay, so this
Jeff Finger. Somebody brought up Jeff Finger.
No, good old Jeff. There we go.
His middle name is Middle.
All right, so here's some of these names I've added today, and because they're different, they're different players, And the other thing about this right now, Kevin, everybody, is the Matthew Tkachuk thing from last summer is in full force, and that you have like guys who are going to be like, and a good example on this would be a guy like
Hannafin in Calgary.
Right, Hannafin in Calgary, or I have another one too.
Nylander in Toronto.
Here we go. So here's one. Russ Colton. All right, Ross Colton's a good one. Okay. Ross Colton.
Ross Cohen and Russ Colton.
Right. Ross Colton had a very good year. Right. He's
been doing it for 3 years now.
Yeah,
I know. $1.7 million. Now he's got one more year on his deal still. But is he going to go to Tampa and say, listen, I'm not going to sign there, again, there's a lot of rumors that he wants to go someplace else.
And I think Tampa wants to move him too.
Right. Yeah. So he's from New Jersey, he's a New Jersey kid. So like the idea of okay, could he be a Devil player? But I know.
They have a gun to their head because he's an Arb Rights RFA. So the qualifying offer or even the new deal, they probably can't afford. So
I'll tell you who I would put on the list there because I would bet that Steve Yzerman likes Ross Colton a lot because he's a real good bottom six guy, really fourth line guy who could score, who could play tough, who is dependable, and he scores at big times in games too. In big games, he's got a lot of playoff experience.
Yeah, there's one word that you used that I think makes him perfect for Detroit, and that is tough. The Red Wings are trying to get tougher.
Right,
he's tough.
And
he's played elevate. He's played third line the last couple of years.
Yeah, he could do that. He's mainly a fourth liner, but he could play third line.
Right. Now that would be
third line on a lot of teams. I mean, fourth line on Tampa is third line on a lot of teams.
Right, but I mean, if he's third line on Tampa, then. They're fourth line on
a lot of teams, and that's so really it does. I mean, they've got a lot of depth in Tampa. I mean, not as much as they did at one point, but they're getting there. Sharon Govich is another one that's really interesting.
He's another year. He's overrated in my book.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The Colorado Avalanche writer at Hockey Now has predicted Colorado will go after him. He just basically said he's exactly the kind of player that Colorado is looking for. So
yeah. I heard that with actually with Winnipeg. That's the kind of player Winnipeg was looking for. That's why.
He's retainable because I think he's 2 or 3 years away from being a UFA. So,
right.
You know, he only had 13 goals last year, so you probably could get him in the mid 2s on a 2 or 3 year deal. And what's going on with New Jersey right now, which is interesting. Obviously, they're going to try to get Myers signed, and there was talk yesterday about them trying to get Dawson Mercer locked up long term. So if they're going to lock up all these guys long term, then somebody is not going to get paid, and a guy like Sharon Govich is probably somebody who is expendable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Gibson, it's, you know, it definitely is starting to make it. You're starting to hear things about where he would like to play, which is always interesting. Like when those things start sneaking out, you know.
He's from Pittsburgh, so that's natural.
He's obviously from Pittsburgh.
I think Dubas will call John Gibson and woo him.
I do. He's a good chance.
He's allowed to.
It seems like a Dubas move to me.
It does.
To make that move.
No, well, not necessarily, because Dubas did not make the big goalie move in Toronto. He went off the scrap.
How'd that work out for him, Mike?
Right. I think
he went off the scrap heap and got Jack Campbell, and then he went.
Right, so to me, this is you might be looking at like Sidney Crosby says, we got to win now.
Right.
And you know, that's like, you know, if Gibson's the kind of move that I think Crosby would love.
But do you want $6.4 million times 4 years? That's the problem.
I mean, it's not that outrageous. We're talking about outrageous. Gibson. I mean,
no, but it would be hard for Pittsburgh. They'll have to, you know, they got to, you know, first they'll have to, you know, get rid of Carter, and so
they'd have to jettison some players. Gostisbehere is like we say, he's one of the top like 4 defensemen available. You know, when you look at this whole thing, you know, he's straight up UFA, and I know Florida's always interested in, has always been. She obviously is from there, but beyond that.
With him, it's cost. With him, it's term and amount. I mean,
and he doesn't want to go back to
Florida. Makes, you know,
he struggled in Philly. He doesn't want to go back there.
No, he's probably not going to go back. But I did hear that, you know, there are, you know, because Philly has been putting together their new group, you know, like, which is like Patrick Sharp, John LeClaire, you know, Keith Jones. These are like the Flyers of the, you know, of the.
Yeah, when is Scotty Upshaw going to get signed as an advisor?
Right, I'm looking, you know, So we're past we skipped right over the Ron Flockhart era of Flyers, but we jumped into the Lindros era of Flyers. So so you know, they're definitely listening to them, and you know, there are some people that Gostisbehere has fans in Philadelphia.
Sure. By the way, there's a side note here, Ek. Because they are hiring so many players from that era. There's a rumor now that their New Jersey is going to be from that era, and fans are not happy about it.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that one. No.
Yeah, because they're going to put their New Jersey out tomorrow, and people are like, "Well, if it's too much from the Lindros era, I'm not going to like that." And that's all they have are the people. Like that's who's running the club are all the people from the Lindros era. So it would be shocking if it's not that.
True. As long as it's not that crazy 3D third jersey that they had. That was the one that
or the
that really got me.
No Cooperalls.
I like the Cooperalls. Ryan Graves, another one. You know, this is another one that, like, you know, we're looking at. You know, some of these guys I know are third, fourth liners, like we said, but you know, Graves.
I'll say this about Graves, and you have Toronto listed at 20%. Brad Treliving is a general manager who, if you look at what he had done in Calgary, he likes big defensemen, and you can't get much bigger than Graves. And Graves is not slow; he's pretty good, effective. You know, not the price doesn't get ridiculous. Then I think the Leafs would be in on him. Yeah. There's some talk today, which I think is complete and utter nonsense, about them buying out TJ Brody because his cap hit would be 0 in the first year of a 2-year buyout. Like if the Leafs are buying out somebody, it's Matt Murray. And it's only $687,000. And I do think if they spend money in free agency, it is going to be on defense. So Graves would.
Right. I would agree with that. I agree with that one. Totally. I totally agree. And Tristan Jarry, Kevin, what do you hear about Tristan Jarry out there? Like, is he?
Yeah, I haven't heard a whole lot about him, but you know, I look at you know, what you have there, and you know, it makes sense. You know, those teams are looking for goalies, but you know, can they? Seattle. The only thing I would say about that is Jarry wants to be paid like a number one goalie, and then you know they'll be paying one goalie. So
yeah, the report that I read was that Sullivan likes Jari and Jari wants to stay in Pittsburgh, but they only go so far as the deal that they get with him, term and money.
Yeah.
If they ask for too much, then they could move on, and then Gibson would be a possibility because what Gibson's making the next 4 years. There's cost certainty there, and you might be able to get Anaheim to retain some salary because they're never going to get close to the cap in the next couple of years.
I got a trade for you.
Okay.
So Edmonton eats a couple million a year, and you trade Tristan Jarry for Jack Campbell. Tristan Jarry played his junior hockey in Edmonton for the Oil Kings, and Jack Campbell goes back to Kyle Dubas.
Interesting.
Wait, don't. There's a reason why the Leafs did not sign Jack Campbell.
You don't know if he doesn't like him, though, Mike.
I'm not saying he doesn't like him. Russ, everybody who's met Jack Campbell likes him. He's a good guy.
No, but I mean as a player. I'm not talking about liking.
No, he's not a number one. He's not a number one.
I personally don't think he's a good guy, but I like
him. He's not a number one goaltender. He got overpaid by Edmonton. It was a bad deal. Nobody is bailing him out of it.
I'm just saying this is a way for both teams to change the complexion.
I think that's an interesting one, Russ. I like it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do come up with interesting thoughts.
They're gonna trade a goaltender with 4 years left at say $3 million that you're talking about for a guy whose contract is up.
But he was making $3. He's going to make more than $3 this year. Doesn't matter what kind of year he had. He's a goalie. He's going to make at least $3.
But Jari's a UFA.
After this year.
No.
He's UFA now.
He's UFA right now?
Yeah.
He's UFA now, but I mean, I think the idea of
they could do a signing
in
trade.
terms of trade, but the idea of them, signing Jari and then
they could do a signing trade. Mike
being traded for something, Campbell could be traded.
I think with all that they went through in Pittsburgh with their goaltending this season, I do not see them bringing in Jack Campbell, who's coming off of,
just throw it out there. That's
chances are better they bring Matt Murray back.
Yeah. No, I mean, these are all.
That joke went flat.
Yeah, well, because Murray, I think, is a great risk of not playing. That's the problem with Murray.
Yes, Matt Murray is not
healthy. He's healthy, though.
Yeah, right.
Yes, he really.
Right now he is.
Until he puts on his uniform.
He could have slipped on his kid's skateboard. You don't know.
It's not fair to Matt Murray, but at the end of the day, yes. That is all the time we have for today, folks. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all soon, and have a wonderful Monday. Draft's only 2 weeks away.